What's good? What's good? What's good? Welcome to I said it's episode 4, but it's really episode 5 of the Rebuttal. And let me just say, I apologize for not coming to y'all last week. Just a lot going on. I'm trying to juggle being in a new area, school, life, so glad to be back this week. I don't have my co-host with me this week because I just really wanted to talk to y'all myself. Um, and just shots out to those guys. When you talk about Jaron Russell, just Josh Sports, and Edwin Klein Peter Jr., they do a good job. So, when you see those guys out and about in this space, I really want y'all to show them support. And I get asked on a lot of podcasts. I get asked on a lot of different shows. I want y'all to start showing those guys some love, getting those guys to go on these shows. Those guys have really, really good perspectives. They have recently played the game. Get on there and get those guys in, man. Last week. So hopefully I have enough to keep things going. But like I said, get those guys on them shows, man. I think they're really good people. Um, a frozen picture, yeah, I'm pretty sure. So my Wi-Fi, if I have to like move around a little bit, y'all excuse it. It's my yeah. I'm looking. I got 2 bars now, so it'll come in, it'll come out. Right. I yeah. So SIAC, man. The SIAC to me has been underwhelming this year. And it probably has been underwhelming for the last couple of seasons, if you ask me. And no, not just because Tuskegee, it's been underwhelming from a couple different perspectives. But I've heard a couple of different narratives as to why people say that it is and think that it is. I think we have to adjust to this new wave of football, this new every year our head coaches are having to be general managers and adjust to this new way of doing things, right? This new way of embracing what football will look like. I mean, roster management is going to be really big going forward because we see now with the transfer portal guys, they come and go. We see the bigger schools coming in and they're coming after the SIAC talent. And a lot of those guys are doing good things. Look at Nathan Rembert at Mississippi Valley. You look at Antonio Meeks at Louisville, who, been getting a few reps here and there. So, hey, you're going to have to be, every year you're going to be constructing a roster. And I think people are going to have to kind of look at what Byron Brown does at Lane. I mean, I think he does a good job with what he has to construct a roster every year with the ins and out. But so it's just where we are, right? I know there's a lot of hype around Clark Atlanta. Everybody is David Wright and Coach Keaton, and like they're doing their thing, which brings me to my first point. I bring my slide up. Coach of the year. And I'm going to hit these points really quick. There's no reason that Coach Keaton hasn't already locked up the coach of the year in the SIAC. I don't care who wins the conference. I don't care who wins the SIAC championship game. I don't care nothing about none of that. I felt like Coach Keaton and Sam Shea had an argument for coach of the year last year, in my opinion. And that's not taking anything away from Coach Berry. I know going undefeated in the conference 2 years in a row, that's a big accomplishment. He got it the first year. I was for it. The second year, yeah, I felt like Sam Shea and Coach Keaton had an argument for Coach of the Year last year. Now, last year, I think I would have given it to Sam Shea, but I think this year, Coach Keaton has done enough to already have wrapped up Coach of the Year. There's just no debate about who Coach of the Year is. It has to be Teddy Keaton. I and listen, Dr. Cavill. I was on Dr. Cavill's show. I hear Dr. Cavill had them ranked number 4, right? I didn't, and I'll be honest with you. Coach Keaton is my guy. Listen, Coach Keaton is my guy. When I was asked, did I think that Coach Keaton be a good fit for Clark Atlanta? I'm very honest, right? No, I did not. When the rumblings were going around about who would Clark Atlanta hire, I wanted them to get an Atlanta person, right? That was just my thinking. And then they came and they asked me, they said, well, what about Keaton? And Keaton had not come across my mind. I felt like Keaton should have been up for a bigger job. I kind of I keep that to myself where I Yeah, so internet problems. I told y'all to start off at the beginning. We would have a few little internet problems. So I'm gonna bring my files back up and we're gonna jump right back into it. And I'm gonna freeze myself so it'll stop trying to use that as the internet. All right. So as long as y'all can hear me, we'll go through the screen. Y'all know I'm here. All right, yeah. My Wi-Fi is acting up. I'm in Baton Rouge. I've talked to these people, whatever. I don't know what's going on with it. But hopefully, by the time we get the real episode 6, we'll get this going. All right. But y'all tell me in the chat as long as y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me? But anyway, so Coach Keaton and going to Coach of the Year, but going to Clark Atlanta, I felt like, hey, this guy, this is who he has to be, right? This is who is it just has to be Keaton. And when they said they were gonna hire him, I said, okay, cool. Like, hey, I feel like he was gonna do a good job. Now, did I think he would get there this fast? Right? I'll be honest, no. I did not think that. That's why when I was on Dr. Cavill's show, and Dr. Cavill was like, he had him ranked 4th. I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I wasn't sure, like the whole idea of these teams meshing, okay? But it has been done. It has been done before. Like in recent memory, of course, there's Roughing at Tuskegee. He takes a 3-7 Tuskegee and he makes them SIAC championship team. But it takes them 3-4 games into the season before they even mesh as a team and realize that they can win. Secondly, the second thing is you look at Charlie Jackson at Kentucky State, right? Charlie Jackson takes 0-10 Kentucky State, taking them 7-4, and they beat 2 FCS teams like his first year, right? They beat Robert Morris and they beat Jackson State that year. So it has been done. Now I was thinking more like 5-5, to be honest with you. And the reason why I thought that was because I thought a lot of the teams that were in the conference would be better this year than they are. I'll be honest. Coach Hayes said Chennis Berry Chennis Berry flipped Benedict fast. I agree. However, it's not lost on me that Chennis Berry followed a legendary coach. And I mean, same with Keaton, right? And y'all know I am a Slater loyalist. I will say that to the day I die. Like, I am a Slater fan. I agree with Clark Atlanta firing Slater because I just felt like that was not a good fit for him. His personality just wasn't going to bode well for Clark Atlanta. And Berry followed the legendary Mike White at Benedict. And so when Berry got there, he found a core of players there that could play. When he got there, Eric Phoenix was already there. So it's like he goes 5-5 his first year there, right? And so it follows that same vein. So I looked at like a 5-5 season being a big time win for Clark Atlanta, to be honest with you. And that's just that's just where I left it, right? I felt like that Coach Keaton could get the 5 wins at Clark Atlanta, and I have said on multiple shows and it's everywhere that they should build a monument of Teddy Keaton in front of Panther Stadium. I still stand by that. He's won 4 games already. He's beat Bethune-Cookman. I think sometime last year, me and the SID was having a conversation. He asked me, did I know what was the best win that Clark Atlanta had ever had? And I was like, whoo. And I went digging. I was like, maybe their best win is the win over Fort Valley to get to, in 1991, to tie the race up so it can be a 5-way tie for SIAC championship, right? So now you're looking at a Clark Atlanta that seemingly is in the driver's seat for the SIAC. I think the road gets a little tougher for Clark Atlanta. I think one thing that bodes well for them, they caught Fort Valley early in the season. Fort Valley, in my opinion, and we'll talk about this later, is the best team in the SIAC, right? That's just where I am with it. There are a lot of teams that have a lot of talent, but they have a lot of weaknesses. But when you start talking about full-blown team, and I think Fort Valley is the only team that can keep pace in scoring with a Clark Atlanta. The other teams, their defenses are going to have to step up because there's not another offense in the conference that can score with Clark Atlanta outside of Fort Valley. But there are some defenses that I think will be able to contain Clark Atlanta a little bit more as the season going on. Mr. Jackson said, I wish the SWAC had OCs like Coach Keaton. I wish all of our schools had OCs like Coach Keaton, right? Well, let me not say that. I wish our schools would accept who they are and be who they are and stop these experiments. And we'll get into these experiments later. But Coach Keaton should be Coach of the Year, point blank period, right? They should be he should be Coach of the Year. Now, there's a comment there. I'm gonna put this comment up and I'm gonna skip around to some slides, and it may not be this slide. So we can just jump. All right, I got him up here. Oh, one more. Go back. One more. Kendrick, I'm on the coast of Georgia, and I hear the rumblings at Savannah State. Things are looking shaky. I was going to check out the SSU Fort Valley game, but most of Savannah just got power back yesterday. Yes. So, look. Savannah State has a hell of a defense. Prove it, Kendrick. Look at that Southern game first half, solid. You look at the Fort Valley game Sunday, solid. They kept Fort Valley to a field goal, right? They kept them to a field goal before halftime. But their defense runs out of gas because they just cannot generate any type of offense. How I knew that Savannah State was in a bad state. Central State has the worst offense that I have physically seen. Central State's offense is bad, okay? is bad. But Central State has a good defense. So I felt like that was going to be two defensive games. Who could just generate enough? And when Savannah State could not generate but 3 points in that game, I said, this might be a rough year. But then, hey, they get a glimmer of hope, because what do? They come down and they beat Tuskegee. Now, I will argue to you, it was a game that Tuskegee gifted to Savannah State. Savannah State could not move the ball on Tuskegee. Tuskegee had the lead, had a double-digit lead with 7 minutes left to go in the game. But what does Tuskegee do? We go 3 and out. We punt the ball punt maybe 10 yards, okay? In 4 plays, they're in the end zone. Okay, we get the ball back again because we still up. We go 3 and out again. I think we maybe like 6 plays that time, okay? We punt the ball again. He does it again. This time the punt maybe goes 5 yards. And in 1 play, they're back in the end zone. And it was like, wait a minute. When you go back and watch that game, it's like, yeah, listen, Savannah, they're in a struggle. I thought last year their defense was good. I felt like last year their defensive line did not get enough credit. But they have a lot of weapons on the offense that I was looking forward to more. I was looking forward to more from Savannah State going in this season. Blue Jackets and Savannah State OC has no clue. Nick is my guy. I don't know, at this point, it's kind of at that point now where I don't know what happens. So Saturday, they have Clark Atlanta, right? And this is how I envision the season going for Savannah State. I don't advocate for anybody losing their job, right? That's just not me, because people have families to feed, and that's not they don't pay me that money. You want me to be your AD, come hire me, then I'll make them kind of decision. But I tell you what, they will face the most generous defense that they have faced this year in Clark Atlanta's defense. They will face the most bendable defense they have faced this year. If Savannah State cannot muster up at least 20 points against Clark Atlanta, they may have won their one and only game. They may have won their one and only game for the season. Now the thing is, and so I get what you're saying. I get this. The problem that I'm having with this, Savannah State's defense is probably, in my opinion, going to be the best defense that Clark Atlanta has faced this season thus far. Now, if Sly was on here, Sly would say that Allen would be the best defense because they kind of game planned all year for Clark Atlanta. But then I kind of disagree with that, because Clark Atlanta has another element to their game. Like they have an element of the run too. And that's the thing that makes Clark dangerous to me, because I feel like Clark Atlanta has an element of run game that I still haven't seen it like just manifesting what it could be. I saw it a little bit in the Fort Valley game, like that freshman, that Pender kid, and then the Crockett kid that transfer in. I think Clark Atlanta could have a serious run game if they ever need to go to it. But it's like half of the problem is Clark Atlanta has been getting down and playing catch up, right, the rest of the game. So I think that Savannah State, I think that second quarter is going to be really big. Can Savannah State contain David Wright and that attack? I think that's going to be a big question. And if they can Nick just muster up enough offense for Savannah State to just put some points on the board? Because here's the truth of the matter, and this for any coach watching. You're not going to outscore Clark Atlanta. If you don't believe me, ask Bethune-Cookman. If you don't believe me, ask Fort Valley. You're not going to outscore Clark Atlanta. Hello, Lane. I don't understand what happened. You're up 28-14. I got the film. I just haven't watched it yet. I need to go and watch it. I didn't get any time to watch it for the show, right? I didn't get a chance to watch it, but you're up 28-14. You have to grind it out because there's nobody else in the conference who can score as fast. And then Lane's defense is not a complement to their offense. You know that the second half is going to be Clark Atlanta's thing. If them getting down like that, the Bethune-Cookman didn't scare them. I'm sorry, being down to Lane is not going to scare them either. I think they kind of like it. So, in my opinion, the best defense is to keep David Wright's ass on the sideline. You got to keep him on the sideline. And I think there is that Lane, you know, here's this thing. Here's this thing about what I see coaches kind of get into. There's this panic mode, right? And I hate to see coaches get in there with a panic mode. Like, eventually Clark Atlanta is going to score. I saw it in the Fort Valley game, right? Fort Valley jumps up 14-0. Then Clark Atlanta starts, like, they score. Why are you running in the panic mode? Why are you now calling like you're behind? Because you're afraid of what David Wright can do. Keep running the ball down their throat, period. Okay? It's just, it is what it is. So anyway, if Savannah State is going to try to get out there and throw the ball around like they were doing at Tuskegee, they're going to get beat 50-0. They're going to get beat 50-60-0 because that defense is going to give out because it is a lot. The receiving core at Clark Atlanta is the best in the conference. Arguably, I mean, some people can argue maybe the wide receiver core at Miles is better just because of the physique of those guys. Like, you know, like they have some big time receivers but I don't think the creativity on offense is there for Miles like it should be. So it's going to be a task for that defense. And I think that defense is I think that defense is going to be tested. Probably more than they've been tested all season. Because I don't think Savannah State has faced, well, outside of Fort Valley, right? But they were able to hold Fort Valley into that for that first half. So it's just, but I feel like Fort Valley's defense is better than Clark. So it's going to be an interesting game. It all depends on Nick, right? It all depends on what Nick can muster up. And if I'm him, I'm lining up and we just going to try to run the ball. And we just going to have to play because we can't outscore Clark Atlanta. Now, as it goes for Kelton and his future, for y'all don't remember, it was a lot of controversy about how Kelton came into that job. Basically, they forced the coach out today for the winning. There was the other coach, I forget his name. He took over after the other coach left after they were transitioning back to the SIAC. I think that coach took them 7-3. They might have been 8-3. I think that was the 8-3. And so for them to be where they are is probably like a I told you so moment for a lot of people because there were a lot of non-HBCU centered media that did not like them getting rid of that coach. And so it's like, it is what it is. But I think Savannah State just has a lot to focus on, right? And I don't know if this season they're going to be able to get it right. And does Kelton get another season at Savannah State? I don't know, right? I don't know if he only wins one game, what the future holds for him. I think he's a good guy. I personally like Kelton, to be honest with you. And I just, at this point, he may have to make some decisions for his future. And we'll just see, right? It just is what it is at this point. Did you see CAU shut down the second half and no game? Absolutely. Now, one thing about it, it's not lost on me who the defensive coordinator is for Clark Atlanta. Let's be very clear. Okay, so I'll be more nuanced. So you can't just take part of what I said and run with it. LC Cole is a winner. Okay, LC Cole, Teddy Keaton, they're synonymous with winning and going into places and winning. End of discussion. you see the adjustments made. I mean, and even they shut down Fort Valley midway that game, and then Fort Valley just opens up because Fort Valley is just so much. Fort Valley is a much better team than I feel like they showed that first game. They were still trying to figure some things out. But yeah, I mean, LC Cole is gonna make the necessary adjustments. He's been there before. There's not a stage that's too big for them, right? To Kelly's point, that's an average. Absolutely. But out of all those games that they have, I think this will be the best defense that they have. I'm not saying they're not going to score 30. What I'm saying is Savannah State, if Savannah State has a chance, right? I'm only talking from the perspective of Savannah State. Teddy Keaton don't need my help, okay? Teddy Keaton don't need no perspective on what they can do. Because if Clark Atlanta starts the game off the way they finish a game, hell, who can beat them in the conference, right? But what I'm saying is Savannah State is one of the best defenses in the conference. They're actually elite. Their record doesn't show it. You look at the score and you look at like them against Fort Valley. Fort Valley and Clark Atlanta are the best offenses in the conference, hands down. Like those are our two most effective and efficient offenses in the conference. Savannah State was able to hold Fort Valley's offense to 3 points going into the half. And so that's all I'm saying. If Savannah State could generate offense, they would be in a different position than they are right now. And so, yes, that game could very much get ugly, but that Savannah State's defense is going to keep them in that game for quite some time. So that's all I'm saying about that, right? All right. Best of luck to Kelton. I kind of threw off my point. We'll go back. Let's see who we want to talk about next. All right. Let's talk about Central State. Blue Jacket, you're absolutely correct. It will wear down if they stay on the field most of the game. They will wear down. Not only do they wear down, and so like that's thrown around a lot about wearing down, but it also breeds into like if your offense is consistently being bad, at some point, field position factors in that, right? Not only them being tired, because when people say that and you go back and you look at the possession, it can seem like a defense been on the field a long time, and you look at it and be like, okay, these time possessions, they're not that long, especially with an offense that can strike as fast as Clark Atlanta, right? Clark Atlanta can strike really fast and score. So the thing is the morale of your defense. If you're constantly getting three and out, and your offense can't get you anything, then it's like, why are we going out here playing, right? It weighs on the mental and the psyche of your defense. And I kind of see that happen with Savannah State. I really hate that we gave them that game, because really Savannah State should be 0-5 right now. Like, we gave them a game in Tuskegee, and I think that's going to hunt Tuskegee for a while. Now, the next coach, right? The next coach is Central State's coach, Kevin Porter. Now, I will be honest, because I'm honest on this show. I don't mean no harm, and I hope don't no coach ever take what I'm saying personal. Like I said, I don't advocate for people losing their job at all. I don't, because they have families and these are human beings, right? They pay people to make those types of decisions, so you'll never get that on my show. But I will be honest, because I'm honest about my own program, right? When I look at Central State, and I knew that their defense would be solid coming into the season, I had a problem about them offensively, because anybody who follows that program knows that they have had this revolving door of quarterbacks in and out that program. So when I found out that Kendall Booney was going to be the guy, I'm like, okay, well, cool. I saw him when they came to play us in Montgomery in 2022. I saw him. They came to Tuskegee, like they made 2 trips. They came to Montgomery in 22. They came to Tuskegee in 23. And so I've seen like there's some sparks. Now they played us really close in both of those games. Central State is a very scrappy team. They are a very defensive-minded team. They do like to throw the ball because last year, I think by the time we were 4 or 5 games into the season, I think they had a game where they quarterback threw like 60 times in the game. Like, so they wanted to air it out. Coming into the season, they had a new offensive coordinator. They were talking about a new offense, and they were thinking pretty high of this season, right? So I looked at their schedule. So the first game they had Morehead State, which is the FCS team. They go there, they play them really close. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, FCS team. They should have won that game, but just couldn't produce offense. That's when I got a real big question mark. Then they run up against Grand Valley. Now, I did not expect them to beat Grand Valley. Wasn't expecting them. Didn't think Grand Valley. I did not have them winning that game. I wanted to see that defense have a little bit more grit in that game, but it is what it is. Okay, so then they get to Savannah State. Savannah State got a defense. The offense is able to muster up 10 points, and that's when I was like, I'm just not sure, right? And I've just been like this, not sure. Like they got defense. So here they go against Albany State. Now, I'll say this about Albany State. Albany State's defense is not what it used to be, right? However, I feel like what they've lost in defense, they have kind of in offensive firepower. We don't talk about Isaiah Knowles, the quarterback for Albany State, enough. He's not into the conversation because kind of David Wright and Kelvin Dorm kind of dominates the conversation. And then I think coming into the season, people had Jaden Adams up there, and I didn't understand. I don't know who the hell voted for that, but I'm going to say this: Kelvin Dorm was robbed of the second team honors. And they put Jaden, and no knock to Jaden, but I just didn't see what people saw and how SIDs and coaches voted for that. I don't know who Gilt's pissed off to make them not vote for Dorm and vote Adams, but I think we see now that was a mistake, right? But Isaiah Knowles has come onto the scene, and he moves the ball well for Albany State. Now, the Albany State Central State game was not televised. People did not see it. I watched the film of it. That Central State's offense is bad. Okay. It's bad. It has no. Sometimes you just wonder. You know what I'm saying? Like you wonder, and don't get me wrong, couch coaches. We're not in that moment or whatever. But I watch a lot of football. I watch a lot of Division II football. I don't too much watch FCS and FBS football. In my spare time, I'm watching the Hardings of the world. I'm watching the Ferris States of the world. I'm watching the West Alabamas, the West Florida, the Valdosta States, the Shepherds, the Wingets. I'm watching these because I'm looking at what these people are doing with the kind of talent that you're getting in Division II. And then I look at the SIAC play, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why for years you would hear me say, we have to use our tight ends more, right? We don't use our tight ends well in SIAC football. Now you'll hear some of the other people talk about we don't use them well in HBCU football at all. And so when I look at this Central State offense, I'm like, they're talented, right? You got Brock, you got some guys for Central State. And it's just like this offense is not taking advantage of the talent that they have. So here's the road. He went 5-5, right? He went 5-5 last season. He was able to knock off Mississippi Valley. And then he went on a four-game winning streak, and I think he lost the last game of the season. So coming to this season, they had high hopes. Now he lost to Albany State, right? He picks up the win against Savannah State. He loses to Albany State. Now I'm looking at this schedule for him. Maybe his next winnable game is Lane. I don't see them being able to knock off Miles. I don't see them being able to generate enough offense against that Miles defense, right? I don't see him being able to outscore Clark Atlanta because that's what you're going to have to do. And depending upon what Clark Atlanta does to Savannah State's defense, it's going to let me know, because Savannah State's defense and Central State's defense, they're just neck and neck to me. So if Clark Atlanta is able to handle that defense, I'm really looking forward to them being able to handle Central State's defense. So it's interesting. And so his offense is ranked last in the conference. Even if you take the Grand Valley State game off, even if you take the Morehead State game off, they're just bad. They're just bad. And I agree, Coach Haight. I think that was one of the advantages that Allen had. Like you didn't know what they were gonna bring. You could only just do right. I'm gonna show y'all a play that happened in the Delta State game. For that tight end conversation. Hopefully my screen will allow me to play it. And I don't think it is. But I tell you what, I'll pull it up later in the conversation. So what does this season come for Coach Porter, right? Well, what I was going to say about when they first hired him, I was confused. I was really confused about them hiring him, because I'm looking at Coach Porter, and I'm looking at his time at Fort Valley State. Everybody needs a job, right? I get it. He needs a job. It was similar issues when he was at Fort Valley. So he goes to Central State. If Central State moves forward, right? They have a new AD. They're doing some different things at Central State. If Central State decides, all right, so I mean, we do also have to add context about these schools not funding their max number of scholarships, right? Like that has to be in the forefront. And I'm gonna get into a conversation about why all these schools should be funding their scholarships. I think there needs to be. There's the old age of thinking at a lot of our institutions that's holding our programs back. But I'll get into that later. Central State brings in a lot of talent. I've said this over and over again. When I saw Central State bringing guys in from Alabama, right? They came down in Mobile, my stomping ground, and got some kids out. And I was like, I don't know whether they don't have inroads in Ohio to a lot of the talent there, but I'm here to tell you, Coach Porter, there's a lot of talent in Ohio. And maybe you need to decide to bring you somebody from up around at either from one of them NAIA schools, or bring somebody up from one of those Ohio high schools that's been successful, to allow you to have inroads into that Ohio talent. How do I know Ohio has talent? Tuskegee. We went there. We went to play this team, Finley. Okay. We beat 2 FCS teams that year. We go out there to a Finley team, play them in like a YMCA stadium. They hung like 65 points on us. I think beat us 65-3. And I think part of the problem is trying to slow down that revolving door and finding you a quarterback and developing an offensive line that you can put together for quite some time. Like I really like that roster makeup for Central State is kind of all over the place. And I don't think Central State is in the same predicament that Lane. Look at Lane's roster. Of course, Lane is pulling guys from everywhere. I think that Central State can get a core of Ohio players. I think there's so much when people talk about sleeper teams. I think Central State is the sleeper program. I think it's one of the best jobs that somebody can get at Central State. I think it's there. I think it's just there for the taking. Of course, people just say that about Clark Atlanta, about it being in Atlanta, but I just think there is a lot of talent hidden in Ohio. That you look at all those Ohio Division II teams and look at how they're doing, how they build their teams out. I think Central State can be a powerhouse, the powerhouse that they once were. This is a national runner-up in Division II. Like, people talk about Winston-Salem's run in Division II playoffs. Central State had a Division II run too. Like, this was a Division II playoff caliber team. Of course, they drop out of Division II. They come back and they join the SIAC, which, I don't know. They'll have to look back and answer that question themselves, right? They have to look back and see was coming to SIAC the best thing for them. Agree. There were some coaches back in the day that didn't want Central State to come into the conference, and I agree. I understood where those coaches were coming. Like I told y'all, my internet is all over the place, right? Let's put this back on the screen. But anyway, that we'll move on from Coach Porter and Central State. So we talked about Central State. We talked about Kelton at Savannah State. All right, my other 11th grade team, Kentucky State. Kentucky State. Now, what Jasmine Sullivan said. Jasmine Sullivan had a song. She said, "I had high hopes for us, baby. Like I was on dope for us, baby. Chasing after a high that I never get back again. But it's been only been 2 long years. And it became painfully clear that we will never see those days again." I was the one that drank the Kool-Aid. Let me cut my camera off because I don't want my Wi-Fi to cut off again. All right. I was the one that drank the Kool-Aid. I drank the Kentucky State Kool-Aid. I did. I like Coach Huggins. He is a likable guy. His personality, I think he's hilarious. When we had him on the SIAC talk, I told the guys, I like him. He came in, told us he was going to run a triple option air raid, something like that. I'll start with the upsides of Kentucky State first. They moved the ball pretty well on Albany State Saturday. I think that's big. I think they have figured out some things that work. The game that I had them winning, was the Morehouse game. They lost that game. I am now pretty much at that Kentucky State will not win a game this season. Now, maybe the coach can clip this, can clip this, and this may be some bulletin board material for them. And it is what it is. But I just don't see them winning a game this year. Now, they could have made the game Saturday. I want y'all to see my face when I say this. They could have made the game a game Saturday. But you know how sometimes when it just ain't your year, it just ain't your year. Things just did not fall right for them. Albany State got the ball right before the half was over. They were able to score, and then it goes in the halftime. They came back out and scored, right? And gave them, and it gave them that 14-point cushion when, and I mean, that's all within maybe a 5-6 minute span. The game went from like a 21-14 game or whatever it was to like a 35-14 game. And it just kind of seemed like Kentucky State felt like they just didn't have enough to get over the hump, right? The ball just fell wrong for them. If they were able to somehow not allow Albany State to score before half, I think that game would have been a more interesting game. Also, I see Denham comes out, so hopefully he's not hurt because he played a hell of a game for them against Albany State. So it's going to be interesting to see them going forward, right? So they got a Lane team. Lane likes to score. I think that Kentucky State can make that a dog fight, but Kentucky State's defense Kentucky State's defense puzzles me, right? Because it's such a senior team. People talk about, oh, this is a rebuild year for Kentucky State. They're still rebuilding. This is a process, and I'm not ready to go here yet. But y'all remind me to come back to this point that I'm going to touch on right here. Kentucky State they have a really, really experienced team. A lot of guys that have played a lot of snaps. They should not be that bad on defense. That defensive line should be better disciplined than they are. Running quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks give Kentucky State hell. Mobile quarterbacks give Albany State hell. Okay, it gives them hell. Now, to this rebuild thing, because of all the experience that they have, we know for certain next year is definitely going to be a rebuild for Kentucky State. If they don't win a game this season, I damn sure don't have them winning the game next season. They're losing too much. All those 6-year guys that's playing on defense, they're losing all those guys. They're gone. This is going to be a totally different Kentucky State team. And I have to think that Kentucky State thought themselves they would be better. There's no way you tell me Coach Huggins is at media day saying, oh, they just wait. They don't know what's about to hit them. I think this year has kind of been a disappointment to them. Okay, I forgave the Virginia Union loss. Yes, okay, whatever. The A&M loss. Hey, it is what it is. Get your money. I hope y'all got more than 35,000 though. Then you go to Fort Valley. Now, if you follow my Twitter, I told Fort Valley to get 50 on them because Fort Valley, in my opinion, I told you Fort Valley is the best team in the conference. Now, I say that with a grain of salt because Clark Atlanta beat Fort Valley. But I still have Fort Valley getting to the championship game, and we'll get into that too. But Kentucky State, right? If you beat Morehouse, that was your game. You play a solid game against Albany State. I feel like you're getting better. I feel like you're getting better, but the defense is not. You're able to find some momentum with your offense, but your defense is just not there. And that's what I thought would be your strong point coming into this season. Defensively, you cannot tell me not on paper that Kentucky State would be this bad defensively. Now, to the conversation. This is Huggins' second year. Now, listen, y'all. When we hire coaches, and I've said this, I've tweeted this out, and this is no disrespect to any of the coaches, because these coaches want to win. These coaches are not bad people. They're not. These are not dumb people. They know what they're doing. They know their job. However, this is my one problem. Kentucky State got a coach that came in, right? Assessed the situation. He ran. We jokingly call it a wing tee. Kentucky State was barely throwing the ball 6 or 7 times a game, but they were winning. It was the best Kentucky State had looked in years. It was the best Kentucky State had competed in years, outside of that one fluke year with the old white coach, Dean, whatever his name was, that they somehow kicked the field goal and beat Miles, and then the next week came and beat us on our homecoming, blocked the field goal and beat us, and went to the championship game with a losing record, right? And Tuskegee had only lost one conference game that year, but because we was in those stupid divisions, they went to the championship, the SIAC championship game, which that's why I hated divisions, because divisions did not allow the two best teams to play in the conference championship. A lot of times it was maybe the third, fourth best team in the conference that just lucked up and won a game and got there, right? When you look at that and you see a coach that has some success, I mean, this coach that I'm talking about, Charlie Jackson, took a 0-10 Kentucky State team, had them 7-4. You knocked off 2 FCS teams. You knocked off Robert Morris, and you knocked off Jackson State. With your limited resources, with your 13, 11, I sometimes I hear they're down to 11 scholarships, and somebody tell me they're 18, 13. But I'm gonna show y'all something that we can do the math, and I don't think it's down to 11. It might be around that 13, 15 mark. But you allow, right? You hire a coach, and he comes in and he is moving right, because even when Charlie Jackson left and they had the interim coach the year before Huggins got there, right? The coaches that were there, they were still one game away from the championship game. Like, even though I think they was 4-6 that year, if they beat Tuskegee, because we're still in division, they beat Tuskegee that year, which they came out pretty. They came out pretty good. If they beat Tuskegee that year, they're in the SIAC championship game again. So then you orchestrated your own rebuild. You hire a coach that comes in with a totally different philosophy from a team that's been competing, right? You're a team that was competing. So when I hear Kentucky State people complaining and being upset about where they are, I'm saying, like, you tore this program down, even though this program was going through some issues, but you guys decided to just blow it up. And because you blew it up, you may be 4 or 5 years away from that type of success again. And I think that's where good ADs come in at, because our programs at the Division II level, right? Our programs at the Division II level have to be better. They have to be bigger than coaches. You think a coach is going to come into Valdosta State and say, you know what, I'm going to run the wing tee. I want to change the whole philosophy, the whole culture around at Valdosta State into something different? Heck no, it's not going to happen. Why? Because these people have a program, they have a standard, they have something that they want to do. That coach has to come there, do a good job, and get a new job. Now, here's the kicker. We don't want to admit this. There are a lot of schools that have success that change coaches every 2-3 years. Why? Because their coaches are getting new jobs. That means they're coming there doing a good job. Then you have schools that firing coaches every 3 or 4 years because they're doing a bad job. And a lot of our coaches, they get fired every 3-4 years, sometimes 2 now, because they're doing a bad job. But every time we hire a different philosophy. We got to get in our minds that maybe at the Division II level, because everybody want to move up, everybody wants to grow, everybody wants a chance to be different. You're not looking. There's no more Cleve Abbott's coming through Tuskegee's door. There's no more Hampton Smiths coming through Albany State's door. There's no more Willie Slaters coming through Tuskegee's door. People who are going to stay there 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years. It's just not going to happen. So because of that, we got to make sure that our programs, that they have an identity. And when we hire coaches are come in, do a really good job. Come in, do a really good job. And hello, Chennisberry came in 5-5, 12-0, 2 years, new job. All right, new coach. It got to be the same thing, right? That's why I didn't necessarily care about when Dickerson came in at Benedict. And a lot of the guys saw how he wanted to take down the pain of their first championship and all of them. Like, hey, Doc, like, look, you want the same thing. You want to come there and be successful. You want to come there. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we do it. We don't have to reinvent and keep changing everything about our system and changing our pipelines and changing how we run. No, come here and do a good job. The foundation is set. Come here and do a great job, because you see, blowing it up, you might not get. I don't know how long Huggins gets at Kentucky State. They got a new AD too. I don't know if they'll give him 4 years, 5 years. But y'all came there, you blew it up. So in defense of Huggins, because in some of these group chats I have defended him, leave him alone. Y'all allowed it to be blown and blown up. So now you got to rebuild. Don't expect much out of next year, because it's going to be a new team next year. So it is what it is. I want our programs to, I think we have to start thinking a little bit differently when we start bringing guys in, and who our programs are. What do we want our programs to be? Now, a lot of folks don't know the history of Kentucky State that well, right? Hey, bring me in. I do a whole presentation about the history of Kentucky State, how y'all came to the SIAC, the talks about it, the grumbles about y'all coming, about y'all deciding to leave, and when y'all were part of the GL, Great Lakes, whatever that conference is that you were a part of before. And, just talk about some of the successful coaches that have been there, and look at what they did compared to when guys come in. So when they come in, there is there is not parameters, but there is somewhat of a guide, right, of how to go forward. Now, to that point, then you get a Teddy Keaton that comes to Clark Atlanta, and that's why when people are like, oh, it's a rebuild. Clark Atlanta ain't no damn rebuild. Now, if we were talking about Atlanta University, we could say a rebuild, because maybe in the 20s and 30s, Atlanta University was good. But when has Clark ever been good? Like, they've been horrible a long time. So there's no rebuild. You don't have a history of winning at Clark Atlanta. You don't have a system of winning. So now you have a coach with a system of winning, right? And so hopefully Keaton is there at least 2 years, because they're going to come calling for Keaton. They're going to come calling for Keaton, because there's some schools that need Keaton right now. There's a lot of schools that need Keaton right now. But anyway, moving off, that's my other school that got an F, So pray for Savannah State, pray for Central State, pray for Kentucky State, and pray for my Tuskegee Golden Tigers too. Now, this is something that I'm always talking about, and we'll go to next week's games and we'll talk about that. I just want to hit on this for a second. A lot of you all may have saw the article about Morehouse talking about leaving the SIAC. And what intrigues me is in my line of work and some of the things that I do for a couple of nonprofit organizations, I'm always talking with different people. A lot of people may not know in 2011, Tuskegee put together like this D1 exploration kind of committee about Tuskegee going Division I. Then, different presidents. We had a lot, right? We had a lot going on. And it kind of got swept under the rug, and we had to address some other major things at the institution. I am one of the ones that believe that Tuskegee should have exited out in 1997 when A&M decided to go. But here's the problem. There are a lot of people who talk about going Division I when a team starts winning. Winning and going Division I, to me, have nothing to do with each other. Because if that's the case, a lot of schools would not be Division I, okay? Some schools are Division I by default. When you look at like a lot of schools in the MEAC, the reason why they go to the MEAC, the MEAC was NAIA when it first started, right? Like they actually dropped down to go up. But that was a different day, different time, right? A&M leaves the SIAC. Tuskegee basically only has one natural rival left in the conference, which is Morehouse after A&M left. But at the time, Dr. Benjamin Payton is the president, which one day when they commission me, I want to write the book about Dr. Payton. So hopefully one day the history department at Tuskegee allows me and commissions me that I can write the book about Dr. Ben Payton, because I feel like that man deserves a book. But Dr. Ben Payton was a really strong figure in the SIAC. He was really stern. He had a lot of say-so. And so at that time, he was not going to lead the SIAC. All right. This is a different day and age. It's a different time. I have been at Tuskegee since I was in my mother's womb, right? My mother was marching around the Piperette pregnant with me. All I know is Tuskegee. I don't know anything else but Tuskegee. I have been around a long time. Even going through foster care, I was still around Tuskegee. I got adopted into a family that loved Tuskegee more than my own biological mother loved Tuskegee. Okay, so I have been around this program for a long time. My 36 years, all 36 of my years have been indoctrinated in Tuskegee. Okay, I can walk you all the way through my 36 years of Tuskegee history. I just can't. And then I went and learned the rest of the history. Now, when I look at the current state of Tuskegee, this is the shot of the Central State game, a home game, our first home game. I have never seen the stands look like this at Tuskegee. Never. Never in my life. But it's something that I've been talking about for a long time. Backtracking, we go back, COVID hit, right? When COVID hit, there are a lot of in the group chats and the alumni pages that I follow, that I'm in a lot of these alumni chapter pages at different places. During COVID, every week they were posting 2 and 3 people, 4 and 5 people that had passed. And every time they would post one of these pictures, I'm like, oh, dang, that's the man that would be at the game. Oh, that's the man that would be. Oh, that's the couple that would be at the game. Oh, that's the couple. And it started dawning on me that a large portion of that Tuskegee fan base was passing away. It made me extremely sad. The side note to that, the second part to that was, I also understand the migration of graduates once they leave Tuskegee now, because Tuskegee is a place that is shrinking in demographics. Like the population is shrinking. It has like a 10% decrease per the census, but I think it's bigger than that, right? Because I don't think the census is able to get the bigger picture. People leave Tuskegee in groves. Also, with the people that's dying, like it was a husband and wife that came. If the husband died, the wife is no longer come, so you lose 2 fans, right? Or if it was, a husband and then the wife is still living, the children come and take the wife back up where they come. So we were losing a lot of people. But because Tuskegee is not a place where the graduates stay like they used to, like there used to be a bunch of Tuskegee grads that stayed in Tuskegee. That is not the case anymore, because people have to go where they They can go and get their money, and nobody wants to be in this overly ultra conservative state of Alabama, right? So it is a hindrance. It's not a big drawing card to stay around the area. So our graduates and our alums, they go further out. With that being said, they don't want to see, when you start talking to the Tuskegee population, I said this on the SIAC talk, things that institutional alignment gets to be a really big conversation, right? The types of majors that your school offers and who they compete with in the workforce, and these types of conversations that are being had. So when you look at who Tuskegee is competing with in the workforce, it doesn't necessarily align with a lot of the schools that are currently in the SIAC. There are a lot of schools in the SIAC. No disrespect to them, I think they're doing a wonderful job. I think it's great that Edward Waters is in the conference. I think it's good to see Allen come back. But when you start talking about Tuskegee moving forward and the brand of Tuskegee is quite well known, and staying in the conference is only going to shrink it even more, right? And so we see with the types of games that we're playing, who our fans want to see. We can go back and look at what excites our fans. Our fans want to see us play A&M. They like that. They want to see us play Grambling. However, here's the problem with it. We're playing Grambling, we're playing A&M with our hands tied behind our back. Whether we want to agree with it or not, D1 or bust is a real thing. It is a real thing. The transfer portal is a real thing. Look at our roster last year. Look what happened to it. It is a real thing. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can approach this Division I. I think it should be approached from a community thing, because I feel like you see the stands. Do you think the stands will look like that if we have a home-and-home series with A&M? No. Will the stands look like that with a home-and-home series against FAMU? No. It will not happen. It also invigorates our base to want to come and see the games. Now, every time you talk about Division I, people get to talking, right? And we always listen to people. There was a saying, I think the president of A&M was on a podcast, and he said, I don't take advice from people. I don't take criticism from people that I wouldn't take advice from. So most of the criticism, when somebody says they're moving Division I, them people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They have never even seen the application to go Division I. I've seen the application. If I could have loaded it on here, I would load it, let you see it. These people, the first thing, why would you go Division I? They say the travel, the money, the cost. So let's get into it. 2009, University of West Florida did not have a football team, right? University of West Florida, since starting the football team, they've won a couple Division II titles. But their president, she formed an athletics visioning team to review the full range of West Florida athletic programs in an effort to recommend the future direction of intercollegiate athletics at UWF, reviewing a detailed analysis of university athletics and working with National Collegiate Athletic Consultant, NACDA, which is like the go-to for most of these PWIs when they get ready to move Division II, right? So anyway, West Florida decided, and this is how they bring it. But this brings me to this conversation. If you want to know more about how a team can be successful at the Division I level, you need to go and read President Chuck Staben, the president of the University of Idaho, read his writings. The problem is a lot of us do a lot of talking. We don't do enough reading. We don't do enough research, right? So a little backstory about him. He became the president of the University of Idaho, and he moved them back out of FBS to FCS. He felt like that University of Idaho could not get into the arms race of the FBS, but they could be successful at the FCS level. And he brings forth a couple of interesting concepts. In each sport, we ignored the cost of scholarships as this was the internal cost transfer. Period. Stop this. I want you to stop, because every time we get to talk about Division I, people get to talk about, oh, we got ad sports. The scholarships is going, the money is going, the money going to be, we're not going to have the money for this. We got to do this. In each sport, we ignored this cost of scholarships as this was an internal cost transfer. Listen. If your school, okay, now unlike Morehouse is different. Most of our schools, and I'm talking about the Albany States and Fort Valley States of the world too, because I think Albany State should be ready to move up too. I think Fort Valley should be considering moving up. And I think that they should go pay this man to consult to come talk to them, because clearly our people have been, their ears have been diluted with the wrong people. I know you can talk about Savannah State, you can talk about Winston-Salem State, they all moved up and they failed. But I am a firm believer that everybody's problem is not your problem. And if you go about it the right way, you can succeed. Like, talk about the teams that have moved up and been successful. Surround yourself about people who do it and talk to these people and see what was the driving force. Now, this man is what I always say. Scholarships, they are a ledger note for the accountant. If you're not at max capacity, if you're not like a Morehouse that has a capacity of how many students that they can have, if you're not at max capacity, I don't want to hear the scholarship talk. Why? Tuskegee is not at max capacity. Well, what does that mean, Tuskegee? You have more spots. If you add 2 more sports, okay, like Tuskegee will have to add 2 more sports to make the 14 sport mandate, right? When you get to talking about adding 2 more sports, and let's just say you add 100 more athletes, do you have to go back? Are you going to have to go back and renegotiate your housing contracts? Are you going to have to go back and renegotiate your food service contracts because of 100 athletes? No. The cafeteria can feed 100 more students. You got room for 100 more students on campus. You do. It's the scholarships are a ledger note, and people who do that, who say that, I'm always just so intrigued about. Clearly, they don't understand that point. But anyway, this is how he starts us off. In each sport, we ignored the cost scholarship because it was an internal cost transfer. That's all it is. Okay. We did, however, also calculate the tuition revenue that students receiving partial scholarships who walked onto the team paid to the university. Here is the kicker. What we lose right now at Division II, the loss is greater for the investment in Division II than it would be at the FCS level. I got some more slides I'm going to show you. What we're losing right now at the Division II level with our non-revenue sports is greater than the increased money and what the deficit would be if we were FCS. He said, we did, however, calculate the tuition revenue that students receiving partial scholarships. And in his argument, if you go back and read his writing, Google his name, read his writing, he has the whole website. What he argues is that because more sports bring more students, which means more partials, because you're not giving all these kids full scholarships, you're giving them partial, you're getting more kids on your campus partial, and the money that you're making from them having to pay the rest of their tuition is greater than you staying where you are. We believe that more than 90% of our student athletes selected UI in a competitive academic athletic recruiting situation because they could participate in their sports there. We make this simplifying assumption that the tuition revenue from all non-scholarship or partial scholarship athletes have been brought to the university by participation in athletics. He is looking at that partial scholarship students is a revenue source for the university. You never hear that when people start talking about Division I. They always talking about, oh, the price tag. You never hear them talking. You never hear them talking about how those partial athletes, because if you got 63 scholarships for football at FCS and you got 120 some guys in the program, if you're funding 63, the partial you got basically 60 more that's paying some form of partial, right? It is a revenue source, and we do not look at it. We always there's a scene in there is a scene in what's the movie how to get away with murder, when the students come to Annalise and they like, and she tells them, y'all always bring me problems and no solutions. There is solution. There are people who have done it. We just don't, we won't get out of our HBCU circles and go talk to the people who have done it. Let's move forward. So I said, let's do a comparison, right? I do a comparison because we don't have to invent the wheel. We don't have to have guests. Yes, Tuskegee needs a feasibility study. They need a good one, right? A feasibility study needs to be done. Albany State needs to do one. Fort Valley needs to do one. Clark Atlanta needs to do one. But I wouldn't be shocked if Dr. French ain't already, that ain't in the back of his mind or whatever they got going on. And I think, and of course, we know now that Morehouse has to be in the thing of doing one. So what's a comparable school with Price? The mother of our school. The mother of our school, Hampton, right? Yes. Do we need our enrollment? Our enrollment should go up? Yes. But your enrollment is going to go up in Division I, number one, because why? I just told you, you're going to add more sports, which the man just argued, you're going to bring more athletes on partials, and their other half that they're paying is going to be a revenue source for your institution. Anyway, let's look at it, right? Participants. For men's teams, total participants. So Tuskegee is A, Hampton is B. We have 243 male participants to Hampton's 221, right? And so the difference is when we start talking about our two sports, because we're going to have to add co-ed or women's sports, but that's another conversation. I don't have time to get into that. But women's team total participants is 116 to their 170, which is where we have to make up some grounds, right? So total participants is, they have 397, we have 359. Let's go to student aid. Let's go to student aid. I'm not sure if Tuskegee would be. The SWAC is an interesting concept, but I have to do another show about arguing about that. But institutional alignment probably would not push us to the SWAC, right? Student aid is your big cost. Now remember what I told y'all, what the man just told you. The president just taught that is an internal cost transfer. We see that number and we bump our heads as if like, oh my God, this is what it costs. Now Hampton is in the CAA, trying to get competitive or up there, whatever the case may be. Okay, we're not going to CAA, but this is it. So our student aid for men's team is almost $1 million. And they're the 3.7 million. That's where people hang their hat on. Oh, we got to go up. It is an internal cost transfer. That's a nice way of saying, it is a ledger note for the accountant. Is what it is, a ledger note for the accountant. Now, here's the thing. Our schools are already teetering around with this, because when we start talking about this HBCU growth, right? And y'all see the headlines, and I talked to my guys in the SIAC talk. We have real conversations, because I'm gonna be honest with you, because I live in the 990s. I live in these audits. Like that's what I personally do. I'm running 2 fundraising campaigns right now. One for the bridge builders of Alabama. This is what I do. So I'm always interested in how these schools are playing around in their notes with their money. So when you see these schools with this growth and they're giving all these institutional scholarships, What do you think they're doing? To be honest with you, I'll tell you what it is. The man said it nice. It's fake money. It's fake money, and what you're banking on when you don't give them full, that the portion that they have to pay becomes a revenue source for your institution. This 3.7, we're already at $1 million. We're at $1 million and we're losing. I just showed you the picture. Look at the crowd. There's no economic, the Savannah State game does not bring an economic impact. When we play Allen, it's not an economic impact on Macon County. It's not an economic impact on the city. But if you're in a home and home with Jackson State, and once your fan base knows that you can go and compete with these teams and you're in Division I, then your fan base is going to get back invigorated. They're going to start back traveling. You're going to replace your fans. Now you're back to your Tuskegee name about having this impact when we go places. It is a win-win situation. Do not get caught up on this price because we got to go from $1 million in student aid to 3.7 in student aid. Okay, then we got to go up for women's student aid. We at 400,000. They're at 2.4 million. Once again, it is ledger notes. Now, what does the real money come in? Because yes, there are some issues that you have to address, right? So that's the green picture, that's the good picture. But we're gonna be completely honest. That's not the screen I want to go to. Because you're gonna have to hire more coaches, right? So right now, we look at the assistant coaches. Let's look at this number. Total assistant coaches right now at Tuskegee, we got 13. Hampton has 23. That's going to come in because why? We have to add more sports, and we're going to have to add more assistants to our football and give out volleyball assistants. Yes. But do y'all see the price? Our average is 48. Their average is 45. For the assistants. We're making the investment already. We're making the solid investments already. We're making the investment without the buzz of saying that we're Division I. Yes, that will up the price. But then here's the big kicker. This is what you have access to. What's keeping a lot of these FCS conferences afloat is that NCAA basketball money. Right? The NCAA basketball money, those units when they go, the media rights that they get helps keep this afloat. And then if I'm Tuskegee, I'm at every city council meeting, I'm at the county commissioner meeting, I'm at the city of Shorter, I'm at all the economic impact board, the Chamber of Commerce. This benefits the entire city. To make the initial investment is like, it used to be 1.5, is about 1.7 to 1.8 million to go now. If Tuskegee really put forth, matter of fact, they could write me, I would raise the money for them. I promise you that we could raise the money in no time. 1.7, 1.9 million for the application fee, right? And I could go into some more numbers about how that can be done, but growth and the expansion is good for the city and it's good for the institution because, like I said, we're already making, this is what I want to get to. If you go here, it's kind of small, but if anybody want to see it, you can hit me up on Twitter and I'll send you this sheet so you can look at it yourself, this comparison sheet. You can do this comparison for any school, right? But I'm just doing the comparison between Hampton and Tuskegee because in comparable of cost and size, right? The money that we're putting into the athletics and the loss that we're taking on our non-revenue sports is greater than the loss that Hampton is taking after the expansion. But what do they get? They get the benefit of being Division I. They get the notoriety of being Division I FCS, and we really should should go forward with that. Like it just is what it is at this point. Like there's no reason. Stop listening to people talk about, oh, the money, the money, the money. Like I said, I'm gonna go back to this guy again because I want y'all to go back and really get into his readings. Like he's a guy who has done it. He even talks about we should add more sports. We should not be scared to add because sports add a revenue line. We're always so, ooh, that's another cost. What they be saying, you got to spend money to make money. You do. Okay? You do. You have to spend money. Now he said, what conference would Tuskegee go in? I ain't ready to make that argument today, but to be honest with you, if I'm Tuskegee, and this just me talking to y'all, right? I'm just gonna talk to y'all for a second. I really think there is room to start a new conference. And I know that may shock some people, and y'all might say, whoa, you done lost your mind now. But just hear me out. And I ain't ready to make this argument out in public. So somebody may get this and they may dog me out about it, right? I think they should start their own conference. And this is why. We saw the ASUN and the WAC make their own conference, right? They create this partnership. So around us in Tuskegee, North Alabama, now West Georgia, and eventually West Florida, they're probably going to join the ASUN. And in my mind, I'm saying, whoa, why would they join those conferences? Like that's a huge footprint for them. But they want to go Division I because they saw what was coming at Division II. If you look at the Division II conferences and their 990s, they're all losing money. They're all losing money right now. Valdosta State wants to go Division I, but they're having some hesitations, right? Because they waited too long to jump in the race. So now here's my thing. Yeah, you can add Delta State to that. Delta State also got some issues about trying to keep their school afloat, and I think going Division I would actually help them as well. So hear me out. The Patriot League at FCS, right? Is they make their own rules about scholarships. I think there needs to be a transitionary league for schools like Tuskegee, Albany State, Fort Valley, Valdosta State. Although West Georgia has already made the jump, North Alabama has already made the jump, and West Florida might be too advanced. They might be ready to make the jump already too. Even add more house to this because you only need 16. But hey, you might want to poach a little bit more because I think there's some other teams that we could poach from another conference, and we get together and we say, hey, we saw what the ASUN did to go to the FCS because we want to jump FCS and we don't want to take on the price tag all at once. We can make the transition together in our own conference and then set the parameters of the rules. Okay, the parameters of the rule this year, we're going to fund 50 scholarships for football, right? We're going to fund 13 scholarships in basketball. We're going to fund this. Slow walk yourself and have a 5-year plan, 4 or 5-year plan, much like the ASUN did. The ASUN did this. This is not reinventing the wheel. They did these same things. You slow walk yourself to give yourself enough time so you can get your foot wet to become a full-fledged member of FCS, and you do that in increments of the year so you won't be a Morris Brown or Savannah State. And part of the problem when they talk about Savannah State dropping down, Savannah State got hung out there in no man's land because they went as an independent, but now you got to have a conference affiliation to go. That's why I say you got to start one. Savannah State got hung out there. Morris Brown got hung out there. And I'll never forget a SWAC for what they did to Morris Brown because that's the SWAC doing, and I'll hang my hat on that. And the SWAC should have gave them back their $5,000 that they paid them to come to that conference. But the SWAC really wanted Clark Atlanta, and Clark Atlanta backed out the last minute. And so I think they did Morris Brown completely wrong. But moving up, I think you can do that as a group, increments, to everybody gets comfortable. Fort Valley has some issues because they need to get their full allotment while they're at Division II, right? And I hate that. I saw your post like they don't have AD, and I really hate that because Fort Valley Fort Valley could be really great. Fort Valley is one of my favorite institutions. Fort Valley is. I have this secret love for Fort Valley that I don't know. I think it reminds me when I was a child and I would go to the Fort Valley games. I think I told y'all this story before. I told y'all since I was in my mama's womb, I was around Tuskegee. So I've been around this a long time. So I talk about older stuff than what people would think because I've just been around the program so long and around people who were invested in Tuskegee. So I remember going to Fort Valley. As soon as you get to those railroad tracks, I mean the cars would be lined up, right? I remember going to Fort Valley and they used to play, I guess it was a baseball field too. They had the shed on the visitor side too, and it'll be full of Fort Valley. Like Fort Valley was a really prideful place. During the halftime show, they would have the dance of the African dancers on the skilts. And I have these great memories of Fort Valley and what that institution at one time was and what it could be. And even from a basketball, those Fort Valley women's basketball team, like I think the lady still holds the record. What she got, like 96 points in the game? I can't think of her name. But those Lonnie Smith teams at Fort Valley, like Fort Valley was the place to be. You've allowed some other institutions. You look at the Mercer's growth. What's the other Middle Georgia, whatever that school that's now they just applied to become Division II, which I'm pretty sure they'll be going to FCS next. We can't keep allowing these institutions to pass us by without competing because we're competing, right? And I'll say this for all the doubters when they talk about what we don't have. If our ancestors had our mentality that we have today, our institutions would not exist. Our institutions would not exist if the ancestors that founded our institutions had y'all mentality. Lack of resources is not an excuse for innovation. When George Carver got the got the Tuskegee, in order to make his lab, he went and found, the little plates that you use to look at the stuff through the little microscope. He went and found beer bottles and cut the bottom of the beer bottles out. Our institutions are founded off being innovative. And it just gets on my nerve that every time one of the schools want to be innovative, we bring all these problems. Stop bringing problems, bring solutions. Our communities need it. Our communities need the growth. And so everybody who has a vested interest in any of these institutions, anybody who has a vested interest in your institution, don't take criticism from folks you wouldn't take advice from. Don't take no criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from. Yes, are there some dangers to it? Yes, it's dangers in everything. There are some dangers, but you assess the danger and then you make a plan for it. Move forward. It is not wrong to want to see your institutions move forward. It's not wrong to want to see your institution move from where they are. Nothing is wrong with that. Nothing. There's nobody. There's not a single person, not a single other fan base that can tell me, oh, Tuskegee shouldn't do this. Because had our ancestors listened, we would not exist today. We would not exist today. We have to keep growing as institutions. We got to keep moving forward. We got to keep pushing. We got to see what's growth. And for somebody like me, so I don't care what people say about Tuskegee shouldn't go. I've seen the decline. I've seen how this conference is stifling the growth. Not a knock to the SIAC. It's not. But sometimes it's time to go. Sometimes it's time to push forward. We got to move forward. But anyway, are there any pros? Are there any pros and cons to half HBCU and half non-HBCU conference? Yes, I think there are a lot of pros and a lot of cons. So here's the thing. I think BJ Jones made a post earlier today, and he said that that football was always meant to be regional. And I agree and I disagree. Because when I look at Tuskegee, Tuskegee's history, all the way back to 1902, that's about as far as that I mean, research, it goes back further than that, but 1902 is when records really start being kept really well. And I look at that and I started to see we were playing games in Texas. We were playing games. We were playing games in Tennessee, in DC. Tuskegee and Howard had a really big rivalry. And what was so interesting in the 1923 game, there's a lot of talk. People always say Southern was the only HBCU with a live mascot. Well, that's not true, because in 1923 Tuskegee had a live mascot. We were gifted a tiger cub at halftime during the 1923 Howard Tuskegee game, right? And I'm looking, and I think that's so interesting to see how our institutions move. So when people start bringing up travel costs today, travel costs, you're hanging your hat on travel costs when our ancestors in 1923 were traveling from Tuskegee, Alabama to Washington, D.C., or Tuskegee, Alabama to Wiley, Texas, Prairie View, Texas. What are you talking about, right? But anyway, to your question, not to get on that. I think when you look at, so let's look at Tennessee State, right, in the OVC, or when you look at North Carolina A&T and Hampton in the CAA, I think you see a lot of people saying that they should just come back to HBCU conference because they're the connection there, right? There's this HBCU environment that we like, or that we like to create. I think in starting a conference, you get to build some type of unity. Though Tennessee State and Hampton and North Carolina, they went into conferences that were already established, and actually conferences that were bleeding because they were losing teams to FBS. So they were not on an equal footing with those teams. And maybe, some of those teams like, oh, y'all stinking up the neighborhood, right, with this. I think in starting a new conference with these teams, I think you're reliant, and you're like more of a partner and not more of a we just invite you here so that our conference won't fold type of deal. But the con is that going to be attractive to your fan base? Will the Tuskegee fan base be interested in a Tuskegee North Alabama type game? I will argue that maybe yes, because Tuskegee played North Alabama in the playoffs and we beat them. Well, we lost one year and then we beat them next year. And I think one year the attendance was around 8,000. Then the year we beat them, I think it was around 10,000, almost a sellout. But there are always issues that you run in, because there was another big issue with North Alabama with our AD at the time. Our AD asked him, because he knew so many of our fans were coming, he asked them to move their band to their side and lead a visitor side, and not their band still on visiting side. And they wrote an article and said, oh, Tuskegee wants to bring back segregation. They don't want it. And, and I was like, yeah. And I don't know if you remember a few years back when A&M played North Alabama, they had an issue. Cornell Maynard was like, oh, we'll never play them again, because he felt like it was some racist things going on. So I feel like you do have to be aware of that. And those are some of the things that when you go to the table, I think, in starting your own conference in this, you're going to the table that we can do this without you. Y'all need our help just as much as we need yours, right? So you look at the GSC now, even with us getting this week 0 game. I remember a few years ago, these schools were totally against having a week 0 game, right? Because the SIAC and the CIAA were having problems with their schedules and being able to get the 10 mandated games, or the 8 Division II mandated games. And so they were like, we need a week 0 game, and they were against it. But then when they started losing teams to FCS, Now everybody pushing for the week 0 game, right? Now they signed on to want to push the legislation through, because now they're bleeding. GSC is going to be down to what, 7 teams next year, because North Greenville going to North Carolina. So I think those are things that you do have to be aware of. But when you go to the table, we don't go to the table. And this is my thing, even with our media rights deal, with everything that we have, we bring more to the table than we give ourselves credit for. A lot of the stereotypes that are about our institutions, we perpetuate ourselves. This couple of days ago, or yesterday, I think, HBCU Twitter was in a frenzy. This man got on Twitter with 100-some followers, and he said something about HBCUs not being fit for his. He wanted to major in theater or something. And all of the HBCU figures, right? The people that I read, the people that I listen to, the people that I think have a good ear to HBCU and everything that's going around our institutions, they gave this man airtime. They went on this whole thing trying to defend, and I don't think trying to defend or trying to put out, right, that, hey, HBCUs, this, and this. You're trying to win arguments with people who do not care. I do not care to win arguments with people. You never see me in those arguments because I don't care, right? I don't care about what those people are talking about. It does nothing to push your institution forward. They don't care. They just want the engagement. Stop giving it to them, because then what happens is the tweet gets seen more and more by people, and people who agree with his sentiment, now they join in. Now you're in this whole battle and you going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I don't care to do that. I just don't, because people who are dead set to think negative about your institution, they're going to do it anyway. Mold is a big time issue. Mold is an issue at the Ivy League. There's a whole book called Mold You. It was a bestseller. That's why the research is being done now on how do you get rid of mold, which brings me to another conversation. Even when we start building dorms, there's a lot of, so hemp, right? Sheetrock made of hemp is a breathable fabric, and it doesn't allow mold to grow. I'm trying to figure out why in our dorms, when we build new dorms, are we not building with that hemp? Yeah, the cost is a little bit more, but the benefit of not having mold anyway. The story for another day. But yeah, so there are some cons. You have to make sure that your fan base is going to be engaged with it. You also got to be mindful of how those people move, and you got to be strategic too, right? I'm not saying we get in this and this our permanent home, because once we get there, the mind got to be, how do we keep growing? How do we keep pushing forward? So our think tanks, when we start having these visionary committees and these think tanks, there should be think tanks around all of our athletic departments. There should be think tanks around everything. I'll tell you one of the things that get on my nerve, and I'm going to close it out here. I'm almost been on here 2 hours. Y'all know Tuskegee was getting the lights, right? And if you know anything about Macon County has an interesting light issue, where we have a utilities company in Macon County called the Utilities Board of Tuskegee, right? UBT is the acronym. And there's always issues about, other power companies can't come in, or part of the county is owned, like Alabama Power or Bullitt County Power, but then the city is like locked down and control of UBT. UBT is really strong. They float the payroll for the city. They float payroll for the county. They buy up a lot of land. Like, it's this big strong company. And when you start talking about bringing lights down there, you're talking about a lot of power, a lot of things to be generated there. I was, in my belief, I was saying, if we want to do lights, and at some point, we got to start thinking sustainability and solar power. We have an engineering department. We have all these departments within a university that we should be interworking. If I'm the athletic departments, I go to the engineering department and say, okay, here's my problem. I want these lights, but I don't want utilities board to have to give me these lights. I don't want to have to pay what it's going to cost. Like, it's too hard to work with them. They're difficult. How can we power these lights? Solar. We got the land. Well, we got the 8th largest campus. in the world out of all universities. We already got solar. We already studying solar power. Like we're studying it. How do we get these lights powered by solar? I don't want to go through them. And with innovation, we got to be thinking sustainability. How does sustainability? How do we cut costs? How do we move forward? Right. And so these are just little things that we just have to do in order to continue to move forward while we make decisions like that. Because we know we get in that conference, Valdosta State. And I think what entice Valdosta State is that they want to play North Alabama again. They want to play West Georgia again, right? They want those matchups together. And you see Albany State plays Valdosta State pretty hard. You know, they have 5,000-6,000 people there at the games or whatever. That's the attendance normally for those games, and even with Fort Valley. So I think there is room where the institutions are acquainted with each other, different than a CAA, them not being acquainted with each other, them just being schools that, you know, they just kind of popped up in and whatever. But it's a lot more. That's a real raw thought. You know, I told y'all I wasn't ready to really put that thought out there. I think a little bit more research needs to be done and really think that through. But just my thoughts. But listen, I appreciate y'all. This was just I just came on and just had a conversation with y'all, right? Real quick, let's go through the games for Saturday. Let's go. I guess I didn't put it up there. Dang, I really thought I had the games from Saturday. If y'all give me a second, I'm gonna pull it up. All right. Let's share screen. All right. So the first game up, we got Clark, Savannah State. We kind of talked about that, right? Like I said, I think Savannah State is probably going to be one of the best defenses that Clark Atlanta has faced this season. I'm not giving Savannah State a snowball chance in hell of winning that game. However, I look for them to make it a game the first quarter. Like I said, you look at what they did with Fort Valley, holding Fort Valley to 3. But then the other part to that is, does Clark Atlanta come out and finally play 4 quarters of football? Normally they've been playing 2 quarters of football at this point, but can they come out and put 4 quarters together and really put a game? Because I think there's a gear that Clark Atlanta has that they just haven't hit yet. I am really impressed with the Pender kid. There was a lot of talk about the running back Crockett coming in, but I really like that Pender kid at running back. I really do. The Lane Kentucky State game, I'm giving it to Lane because Kentucky State, yikes. It's one of those years. But Lane is also one of those teams. They just scrappy, man. Like, they can score. They just got to finish games. I hope Ike Brown is better because I was looking at it. I see he didn't play much Saturday. So, like I said, I haven't seen the tape. I do have it. I'm going to look at it, and I'll probably put some more commentary on Twitter. But I'm looking for Lane to win that one. We got Tuskegee at Morehouse. Tuskegee gets their first win Saturday against Edward Waters. Tuskegee they finally did something that they should have been doing. Run the ball and going with Bill. I think the Robinson kid is a really good athlete. But I feel like Bill gives us the best chance to win because I feel like he's a little bit more accurate and he knows to go at the ball. And I just felt like we just needed to ride him and allow him to get into the game. So you see him play Saturday and he gets in the game and then eventually pulls it up and gets the offense going in that second half, and they began to run the ball, ran the ball down Edward Waters' throat. So I look for Tuskegee to continue that. I think we have a solid defense. When the offense is playing, I think we have one of the best defenses in the conference. So I'm not looking for Morehouse to be able to score on us too much Saturday. But then this is the classic. Morehouse tends to play their best game when they play us. I've seen Morehouse come in and haven't won a game and come in and play us like a championship caliber team. So we'll see. I think can Morehouse play for pride or whatever at this point and get a win. But Tuskegee need to handle business. Then you got Benedict and North Greenville. I don't know what North Greenville has. I don't like North Greenville from what they did to us in the playoffs one year. So hopefully Benedict wins. Benedict's one of those teams that they're still finding themselves when they're on their own. I don't know if I hate to just call him the white boy, but the white quarterback, he makes them looks. They look different when he's in, but also the Simmons kid, the Trey kid, like he's good too. He can kind of throw it around. So it just depends. Can they muster up enough offense, and not make so many silly penalties? So it's gonna be up to them whether they win. The Fort Valley Edward Waters, I expect Fort Valley to dominate that game. Like I said, Fort Valley is the best team in this conference. They got hit in the mouth really early with Clark Atlanta, but Kelvin Durham, he is what he is. And I think that Kelvin Durham, Brandon Marshall, their defense is not what we normally thought because when we saw in that Clark Atlanta game. But as you see after that game, they kind of got together. So they were able to hold Savannah State, which isn't hard to do. They got moving with Albany State, so that's a really good. Fort Valley's a really good team, and I expect them to dominate at Waters. And then we got Albany State at Allen. We'll see. I'm unsure of Allen, to be honest with you. I saw that they played really hard against Clark Atlanta. They played really hard against Livingstone. Albany State, I mean, they played with their food a little bit with Kentucky State. So I mean that's a game that I think if Albany State doesn't come in focus, I think Allen can make that one interesting. We'll see. I got Albany State winning because I feel like they got enough firepower, but they dang show can't. That defense is gonna have to tighten up a little bit. What Kentucky State was able to do to that defense concerns me a lot about if Albany State can make a real run to return back to the SIAC championship game. Although I don't have them in the SIAC championship game, I just don't see that Albany State team beating Fort Valley. But hey, that's a classic game. So we'll see. And then the other game we got Miles and Central State. Miles is homecoming. Hopefully Miles is focused enough. I don't think Central State can produce enough offense to score on Miles' defense or score enough to win. So I really expect Miles to win. They really leaned heavy on the run game to beat Allen. So we'll see how Miles comes out. But yeah, that's the game for the week. And we'll see. Next week on the rebuttal, I'm going to have my guys back. So y'all got one episode of me just of my thoughts. I ain't really want to bring them on tonight. With me talking about what I was talking about. But it's going to go to this point. Like, look them up on Twitter, Instagram, Jaron Russell, Just Josh Sports, and Edwin Kleinpeter, man. Like, support these young guys coming in and all the people that I'm telling you that invite me on these podcasts. And I enjoy y'all inviting me. But I'm telling you, I want y'all to start inviting these young cats up. It's better for the conference, right? It's better for the overall growth of sports. For the SIAC, for Division II, to get these younger guys in and let them do their thing, like embrace them. Yeah, they come in, they might talk a little junk with you, whatever, but embrace them. I think that's how we grow. I look at our SID departments, in the conference, and how we had the SIDs that were there for 40, 50 years. And I was like, hey man, if they would have bought somebody in, help train them up and whatever. So now we're in the social media age. I think these guys do a really good job. Kelly Flicks is another guy. Get him on here. And talk to these guys. I mean, you will learn a lot more about the SIAC. Somebody told me, it was like, man, you be on 5-6 different shows a week talking about the SIAC. And I was like, yeah, but I'm happy to see these guys get in here and want to be a part. These are guys that have gone through the programs, they've graduated, and they're still around. We gotta use the talent that's there. I think Jaron Russell, his analysis on football is second to none, right? He's played it. He's played it at Alcorn, and he played at Edward Waters. He played at a high level. So, get those guys. I respect them, and I'm glad they come on to this show. But I definitely want to make sure that I continue to push them and push them forward. So you don't have to call Kendrick all the time. I appreciate you calling me, but I'm here. When I started the D2 HBCU football page, yeah, it was rarely nobody talking about SIAC outside of the website. Dang, what's the website called? I always forget the name of the website. But yeah, and so I've grown it to what it is, and I think those cats can take it to another level. That way I can just focus on law school, right? So I'm glad to see more people in it, and I appreciate it. We'll be back next Wednesday. Don't forget Sundays we do the SIAC talk. I got 5 other guys in that. We got Randall, and Randall, he's the founder of HBCU Pulse, and he runs Clutch Points. A really good dude, and Fort Valley, you have one of the guys that owns one of the largest HBCU centered websites out there. He's on Sirius XM. He's really big in for Kelvin Dorm to break the records. I really wish that somehow that Fort Valley and Randall could work somehow. I really wish Fort Valley would really lean on. If our institution would just lean on the people that have gone through our gates, right? Everything that we need at our institutions have already gone through those gates, or they're on campus right now. We just gotta reach out, and we just gotta get them. So I think Randall is really good. And I think that Fort Valley could definitely benefit, and they could leverage each other. And y'all actually should just hire the man in some capacity, to be honest with you. But anyway, Randall and I got Damien, and I got Kelly Flicks. He has a couple HBCU shows. Really good, solid dude. Follow all his stuff. And then I got Coach Thomas. He's a Benedict grad, played football at Benedict, and now he's a high school football coach. So on SIAC Talk, we really get into the games, and we talk about a lot. So check us out Sundays. It's Sundays around 7:30 Central, and that's when we really talk a lot of trash. And then I'll be right back here next Wednesday at 7:30. Appreciate y'all. Till next time.